I have the pleasure and honor of introducing our luncheon speaker, the Honorable Jane Harman, who is the Director, the President, and the CEO of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. And we are all scholars here of one sort or another. I could not think of a better person to address us, given the topic that we have been dealing with in this conference. Jane Harman has been at the Woodrow Wilson Center for nearly 2 years. She resigned from Congress, where she served 9 terms as a member of the House of Representatives. She almost became the governor of California, and California, think of what it would have become if she had been able to be the governor there. They'd probably have a balanced budget and twice as large GDP. In the Congress, she represents a district in California which is famous for its aerospace industry. And in the Congress, she spent 6 years serving on the Armed Services Committee, 8 years on the Intelligence Committee, 4 years on the Homeland Security Committee. She serves on the Defense Policy Board. She is on the Foreign Policy Advisory Boards of the State Department, the CIA, the Director of National Intelligence. She has received awards from every significant national security organization in Washington. Earlier, before she joined the Congress, she was the Deputy Cabinet Secretary for President Jimmy Carter, and she was also a senior staffer in the Senate. So no one can match her credentials on national security issues, on her understanding of the intersection between Congress and national policy. This is the area that the Wilson Center is focused on, bringing together the world of scholarship and the world of national policy. I think that's also a critical issue in the subject of our conference, and therefore I'm particularly happy that Jane Harman has agreed to offer some remarks here at lunch today. Thank you. Please join me in welcoming.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be a pinch hitter. I don't bring the skill sets that all of you do to this conversation, but I'm pleased that Stape, after spending a weekend, he only spent actually 24 hours or less than that, in my former congressional district last weekend when we both spoke to the Pacific Council, has now decided that I am a very impressive China scholar. You should know, at the Pacific Council annual meeting on the beach in Los Angeles, talked brilliantly about China's leadership transition, and I offered a far less nuanced set of observations about the U.S. strategy, our new U.S. strategy known as the pivot or the rebalance. I think that's my preferred term, to Asia. Michelle Flournoy was also there, and she and I had a conversation about this. She was one of the architects of the new strategy. I think you all know this, when she was the Undersecretary of Defense, and she may, who knows, how our leadership transition will turn out, but she may be Secretary of Defense in the near future. As Stape said, I served 9 terms in Congress and on all of the major security committees. This observation I can make with certainty. It is very troubling how clueless most members of Congress are about China. During the recent election campaign, we saw irresponsible China bashing by both parties. Indeed, some terrible policies, think our export licensing system for commercial satellites, have resulted when our Congress turns China into a political football. A big role for the Wilson Center and for GW, it's wonderful to see this collaboration, is to educate Congress and the public, our public, about the real, and China's public, about the real issues, and we are thrilled to be hosting a conference that does that. I want to congratulate the organizers of the conference, part of GW's Rising Powers Initiative, for examining the worldview of aspiring powers, as well as the domestic foreign policy debates that are an inevitable part of both global and regional power adjustments. China's rise to global great power status is a dramatic success story of the first decades of this millennium. And we don't have that many success stories, so this is one we should understand well and learn from. Yesterday, much of China's new leadership was chosen. I was just asking Stape for the rundown. And they will inevitably reshape China's foreign policy. The quest for wealth and power has been a central element in China's struggle to modernize the country over the past 150 years, which in Chinese history is but a thimble. And only in recent decades has China unlocked the secret of rapid and sustainable growth, and the results have been dramatic, by and large positive. Hundreds of millions, I mean, these are numbers little old Americans can hardly wrap our heads around, have been lifted to middle-class status at an undreamed of speed, and there are now more billionaires in China than in any other country. But China's success has brought with it a host of thorny problems, both domestic and foreign. In particular, there's the danger that growing military rivalry between China and the U.S. in the Pacific will drive the bilateral relationship in the wrong direction. We need to try to avoid this. Influential voices in both countries argue that China and the United States are heading for inevitable confrontation. Some of my former colleagues on the Hill share this view uncritically, but more nuanced voices do exist there as well. How do people in China think of us? A recent Pew poll found that the Chinese public is increasingly expressing reservations about the U.S., that the percentage of Chinese who characterize their relationship with us as cooperative has plummeted from 68% to 39%. It sounds like Obama's approval rating. And that the percentage of Chinese who say that the relationship is one of hostility rose from 8% 2 years ago to 26% today. Those are dangerous trends. Meanwhile, another Pew poll this year, which was conducted in consultation with our vaunted Kissinger Institute here at the Wilson Center, found that a majority of people surveyed in the U.S. say that the U.S. can't trust China, and that China doesn't consider the interests of other countries when making foreign policy decisions. One of the big issues is that a gap exists, clearly, between how American foreign policy experts view China and what members of Congress and the general public think about China. I think all of us here, that would even include me, the recovering politician, have a much more positive view of these things than most people down the street. I see David nodding. Got it right, got it right. So, some examples of this point. With the exception of retired military officers, only about 30% of the American foreign policy experts surveyed considered China's emergence as a world power to be a major threat. I'll say that again. It's some retired military officers who are negative, but other foreign policy experts are positive. Second, even fewer experts express concern about the loss of U.S. jobs to China. That's a much more complex situation, as everyone in this room understands, but almost nobody in Congress understands. Third, unlike the general public or Congress, experts are far more likely to support building a strong relationship with China than to back being tough with China on economic issues. In other words, in contrast to many elected officials in the general public, American foreign policy experts are far less concerned about the implications of China's rising power. So, how can we help to bridge the divide between the views of experts and the general public and promote stability in the region? A distinguished group of scholars, retired senior military officials, and former members of Congress, brain cells go up when one leaves Congress, who advised the State Department recently made some important suggestions. First, the United States should forge an Asia policy that includes a China component rather than making China the central focus of its regional policy. For this reason, U.S. policy should emphasize advancing U.S. interests in the region and not be couched in terms of either containing China or setting up a G2 condominium with it. This, I know, is a point Stape emphatically endorses, and he can make it much more convincingly than I can. Second, While working to strengthen relationships with regional allies and partners, the U.S. should recognize that countries in Asia do not want to be forced to choose between the U.S. and China. Again, China is the largest trading partner of most of the countries in the region, but they also, like us, they don't want us to lead there. They want us to support them as they forge a regional alliance, which from time to time needs to curb China's excessive use of power. So we're in a good situation. Stape taught me this. We don't have to act alone in the region. We can work with other people. And third, the United States should explain its rebalancing strategy better so that it is not misunderstood as a containment policy. Secretary Panetta has an opportunity to do this week. He's in the region, and President Obama is going there shortly. Again, we haven't done this well enough. At our Democratic convention, after when Obama spoke, no, it wasn't at our Democratic convention. After that, I saw Obama speak somewhere, and he said, given President Clinton's role at our Democratic convention, he was going to appoint him as the Secretary of Explaining Things. And I think if he does that, which seems to me to be a very smart move, the first thing he should explain better is this rebalance to Asia. So what should we be saying? First, we should reiterate that a more prosperous, powerful China is not necessarily a threat to critical U.S. interests. Second, we should show appropriate respect for China and Chinese leaders in both process and substance. Respect goes very far. We don't have to agree with everything China does, but if we disagree, we should disagree respectfully. Third, we should reaffirm a U.S. one China policy linked to a no use of force to change the cross-strait status quo. I think that's easier to do. I think that's been our policy a long time. And fourth, we should articulate a pathway for China to pursue its legitimate interests using peaceful means, including a willingness to support joint development of resources and increased economic links in general. Certainly, as a Californian, which borders on the Pacific, in case any of you missed that, my state understands this. A huge part of our population is of Chinese origin, and an enormous amount of our trade is with China. And it makes absolutely no sense to turn a friend, or at least a frenemy, if you have kids, you'll know what that means, into an enemy. So what are the key takeaway points? First, despite differences in political systems, economic models, and values, the U.S. and China are not engaged in a global ideological conflict and do not have fundamentally incompatible economic or strategic objectives. Second, China's growing power has increased its bargaining leverage, but Chinese leaders still want and need a cooperative relationship with Washington. I'm sure many of the Chinese leaders in this room and the Chinese scholars will affirm that. As a result, in my view, the United States should work with China and the international community to develop rules and norms on things like cybersecurity. This is critically important. Let's not keep misunderstanding each other on the issue. Let's forge common rules, and we can do it in other areas too. Finally, third, a more active and capable Chinese military, this it will be news to Congress, but it is something that I think is true, will increasingly operate in close proximity to U.S. forces in Asia. The U.S. should use dialogue and international rules and norms to reduce the risk of accidents or incidents and to develop better bilateral crisis management mechanisms. Our militaries can collaborate very effectively. One of the things the U.S. military has done effectively in Asia, especially through a base we have in Thailand, is to deploy relief in disasters, natural disasters. And nobody missed the Japanese earthquake and the tsunamis in and around the Thailand area and the numerous unfortunate disasters in China and elsewhere. They're not just limited to the Asia region, but we do a good job, a really good job of deploying disaster relief, and it's something, every time we do that, our popularity in the world goes up, and there's no reason why we can't collaborate with the Chinese military in doing some of that work as well. And I have every reason to think the chance of miscalculation, mutual miscalculation, would go down if we worked on more joint military projects. So let me conclude by saying that in both China and the United States, there is a wide variety of ideas and attitudes regarding both the nature of the other country and the foreign and security policies that are most suitable for advancing national interests. Under these circumstances, it's essential for leading experts on each side, both civilian and military, to have a comprehensive and sophisticated and nuanced understanding of the policies and the intentions of the other. This is something I hear State Roy say all the time. Both sides are working in this direction, and some important bilateral mechanisms have been established, such as the what do they call it? The S&ED, the Security and Economic Dialogue. Strategic and Economic Dialogue. I was so focused on getting the acronym right, I messed up the name of it. That can contribute to the goal. Instability in China would pose dangers for U.S. interests as well as for the Chinese themselves. So going forward, U.S. policymakers should assure Chinese leaders that U.S. policies do not seek to create instability or take advantage of political or ethnic unrest. Obviously, we would like that, that pledge to be in reverse as well, but this is something logical to do. It's in both of our interests. Creating healthy and well-informed public opinion in each country is also vitally important. Instead of this endless China bashing, we should have endless China embracing, unless there are circumstances where that's not appropriate. But my guess is it usually will be. And conferences such as this are important building blocks in creating a positive bilateral relationship that will serve the interests of both countries. We are proud to be hosting these discussions at the Wilson Center, which, as I hope you know, is dedicated to bridging the gap between our 28th president's two passions, scholarship and public policy. Thank you very much. Stape asked if I want to take a few questions. I'll be happy to do that, and anything hard he will answer. And please, I'm really not interested in discussing the sex lives of some of our generals. Or your generals, either. Yeah.
You've killed all the questions.
Get up here. You're going to do
There's somebody over here.
Thank you. Yves Tiberghien, the director of the Institute of Asian Research at UBC in Vancouver, Canada, but a former student of Mike Oxenberg, who worked in a Carter administration, and Dan Akimoto. A little question on the Senkaku Diaoyu issue. Could the US have been more proactive, especially in the summer, to prevent the nationalization, which triggered the whole sequence? That is, in working with Japan, in looking for a third way, neither the Ishihara-Tokyo way nor the nationalization, as it triggered, and it in a way, it enmeshes the US-China relationship in a difficult cycle.
Well, this is something Stape and I have talked about. Why don't you answer that question? Because you really, I'm not ducking. The answer is yes, the U.S. could have been more proactive, and the U.S. needs to make sure what we convey is neutrality, helping the parties in the region work out their problems, not taking sides. But I think that got much too heated because of, at least, I don't know about the administration's ability to comprehend it, but the media, it seemed to me, blew it out of proportion. I don't know. Would you add anything?
I think you've handled it fine.
I've handled it fine. That's what I think. Yes.
Hi, Bob Sutter from George Washington University. This is Director Harmon. This is directed to you in your experience with politics in Washington. And
how many of the rest of you have been in elected politics? This must be a very smart crowd.
it's fundamental for the United States in dealing with China to have its house in order. and we have many challenges in the months ahead. Do you have a forecast that you could give us? As to
The fiscal cliff?
Yes, and related issues, and what to watch for, at least. What are the indicators that you're looking at that would give us a sense of, are we on the right road to a compromise, or are we at a dead end?
Well, yeah, I can try to answer that one. It's better than certain rocks in the East China Sea. Few people have rocks in their head, too, which is one of the problems. I mean, it is tragic to see in certain ways U.S. power eroding for reasons that are preventable. I mean, it may be that in a 21st century world, our power situation will change, but the preventable reasons are that we have a broken Congress, which can't get anything done, and that we set up challenges for ourselves that, like this fiscal cliff possibility, that really scare the rest of the world. It is important that we get through this, but I don't think just that we get through it, but that we fix some of the problems on a longer-term basis. I'm more optimistic that we'll get through it in a sort of patched-up way than I am that we'll fix the longer-term problems. I don't think sequestration will happen. It would happen if we can't find a way over 10 years to save $1.2 trillion. I think Congress somehow will find a way to do it, but it will be patchwork. It will be, oh, we're leaving Afghanistan, so we've just found all this money, or, oh, we're going to let something expire, but then we'll resurrect it on January 1st. And a variety of these it will be in part a shell game, I guess is what I'm trying to say. That's not an adequate fix. I think Congress will do that. Next year, and the first year of a 4-year term of a president is the best legislative year, I think it is absolutely imperative that President Obama engage personally with the members of the United States Congress, and that maximum pressure be put on by the outraged citizenry in this country, that most of whom don't want Congress to be broken, to make a big deal, to go big on our budget problems. And there are lots of ideas out there. I think you've all heard of Simpson-Bowles. It's a good framework. The framework is to put reform of everything on the table, and that's what we should do. We should have tax reform, entitlement reform, and spending cuts on the table, and make the best trades possible to get to a way to save $4 trillion. That's the right amount of money over 10 years. And if we're able to do that, I think our own economy will rebound faster than it has, and we should add a piece of rebuilding our infrastructure. China's a lot better at building infrastructure than we are, and maybe the Chinese should be able to participate. There should be public-private partnerships to rebuild a lot of our infrastructure. Our government doesn't have to pay for it, but if we do all of that, our economy will rebound faster. Our reputation in the world as someone whose economy is in decline will change, and our reputation for not being able to do anything through our Congress will change. So I guess my answer to you is, short term we'll muddle through. Longer term, there is a roadmap, but we have to have the will to embrace it.
I'm Delilah. I'm a graduate student from the Elliott School. You mentioned in the beginning that most members of Congress are clueless about what's going on in China. So how would you recommend the educated Americans, as well as the Chinese side, to inform Congress about China?
Well, events like this are generating a common set of facts, which is where you start. And I'm not sure total congruity in views. I think people can properly disagree with each other, but at least some respectful set of premises. And those premises need to get much more visibility. This is something everybody in this room can contribute to, both in the U.S. and in China. You all have access to policymakers. You have access to that policymakers in our executive branch and in our Congress. You can produce materials in a form that members of Congress can read. That would be short and concise. And we can help at the Wilson Center, and you can help at GW, put on conferences that will educate members of Congress and senior staff. In fact, one of the things we're planning to do here, starting early next year, is to conduct what we're going to call Foreign Policy School. And it will be on Friday afternoons when Congress is not voting for senior personal staff members of Congress on a bipartisan, bicameral basis. And we're going to teach things that Congress is interested in and that we know how to teach. And of course, one of the subjects we're going to teach is China. And that idea could be replicated all throughout China in various ways. Again, teaching, your elected officials and government ministers are maybe more sophisticated about the United States. However, I would bet that there is room to learn more, especially if what they're learning is based on a common set of assumptions arrived at in meetings like this.
Mike Macetic, the PBS Online NewsHour. During your time in Congress, a lot of foreign policy hinged on our dependence on Middle Eastern energy and oil. Mm-hmm. That is now dramatically changing, but at the same time, as per Tom Friedman's column yesterday, the Mideast may go up in smoke this year with Jordan following Syria, all the dominoes falling down. How do you adjust between the long-term evaluation that we have to make of our policy in Asia versus what could be the preoccupation of policymakers in the coming year with an exploding Middle East?
Well, we have to do both. I asked Michelle Flournoy that question. I put it in terms of brain cells. If the rebalance to Asia, not the containment of China, the rebalance to Asia is intended to put a bigger focus on the potential for a positive relationship in Asia, and we're going to do that not just through a bunch of speeches, but a focus. What happens when the Middle East blows up? And she said, and I agree, we have to plan for that, and we have to be able to do both. And I think if we plan well for that, and I don't think our planning in the Middle East up to date, and I won't give any specifics, but you all know what I'm talking about, anticipating it, providing adequate security and the rest. I think our planning has been challenged, but I believe we are learning lessons from that, and we will have to devote some of our tactical focus and brain cells to the Middle East over a long period of time. But our strategic interest, and I believe this, and I think our government believes this, and I think everyone here believes this, is in understanding and playing a positive role in Asia. And we have to pay attention to that at the same time. Okay. No, we have one more question here, and I did forget to say one thing that came out of the weekend, which you can also help with, and that is passing the Law of the Sea Treaty. It just seems like, even though we abide by its terms, the fact that we, the U.S., have not passed it for reasons that I don't think are valid, is embarrassing. And something this Congress could do, I don't know that it will do it, is step up and find 2/3 vote to ratify the Law of the Sea Treaty. Yeah.
Yes, good, thank you. I have a close friend who's very deeply involved in that issue, and I'll convey your comments. He'll be glad to hear it. I just wanted to ask you about trade policy, which is also, of course, part of the domestic economic circumstances. There's a tug of war, as you mentioned, going on between the general public and the elites. The elites still seem to be in favor of opening markets or keeping markets open. Who's going to win that tug of war? It seems to me it's constantly moving in the direction of more protectionism. Wouldn't that be a very bad development for our
That would be very bad. I
country?
actually don't think it's moving in that direction, although there are some interest groups dug in that direction. Last year, finally, it took forever, the U.S. passed bilateral trade agreements with Colombia and Panama and Korea. they'd been tied up forever, but they were passed. This was very positive. This was the Obama administration and the cast of characters in Congress, at least on the Democratic side, the ones who resisted this, are still there, but their ranks are not bigger. So I would say we're still capable of doing this. During my earlier years in Congress, we passed most favored nation status for China repeatedly, and then we finally did permanent trade status. Those were controversial votes that I made. The left wing of the Democratic Party never forgave me for that, and they always ran candidates against me, but I won. So I think that while there's a lot of noise against trade, there is, in the Obama administration and in our Congress, some support. And again, education could help. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not that U.S. jobs are being sucked out and put in China. In fact, one of the ironies is some of those jobs are being sucked out of China and put elsewhere, and labor rates are rising in China. So it seems to me, done right, we're going to grow jobs. We're going to grow the kind of jobs we want in the U.S. and grow the kind of jobs we want in China if we manage the trading relationship well. So I see it as a positive-sum game. Oh, one more. Hi.
Hi, I'm Susan Lawrence from the Congressional Research Service.
Hi.
And you raised some concerns about the implementation of the rebalancing to Asia. I wondered if you could talk a bit about
the explaining of it.
the explaining of it.
and,
Okay.
and whether there are enough brain cells to implement it and resources.
I wondered if you saw any role for Congress in sort of explaining or better implementation or other aspects of the rebalancing to Asia.
Well, I don't, Congress, if it understands what we're doing, which is, doesn't yet, but I think the public doesn't understand it either. I think the policy has to be explained better. Congress could embrace the policy. Congress also writes the checks, to remind, and as we go forward, if we can get through the immediate crisis, not have sequestration, and then go big and come up with a long-term $4 trillion plan to make our budget healthy, Congress then can focus on what do we need to fund in the region that would be most helpful. U.S. military bases are shrinking, not growing. I think that most people think that's a good idea around the world, not just in Asia. But we have platforms we can use to the extent we're deploying our military, and we have mill-to-mill exercises that could be very positive. We can stage disaster relief in common. That, I think, is, again, something that I would do. And then, in terms of using our soft power, most people in America have no idea how big our foreign aid budget is. I had lots of people tell me over the years, Democrats and Republicans from California, that it's 50% of the federal budget. It's probably half of 1% of the federal budget, and it's a very important expenditure. And I think Congress, maybe even the new members, could eventually learn this and increase the foreign aid budget, which I think would be enormously helpful. So thank you all. It matters to me. I'm very honored to be head of a place that aligns scholarship and policy. I often say it has no resemblance to my last job, but I would like it to have a resemblance to my last job. I would like those in my last job to have better information, and it starts right here. And I hope for the same with respect to the Chinese government and those who are thinking about the policy future of China. I would look forward to us being better friends and better informed. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those remarks. I might add as a postscript that Director Harman does not believe that scholarship should be restricted to bookish learning. In assessing national security risks, she has been to North Korea, to Syria, to Libya, to Afghanistan, to Pakistan, to Yemen, and not for salmon fishing. And she's been to Guantanamo Bay. So this is the spirit that infuses this place, which is study hard, but get out and see the real world as well. Thank you very much.